The bulldozer's engine roars to life at exactly 2:15 p.m., and I watch the HOA president's face drain of all color. Stop! Stop! You can't do this. What are you doing? She screams. We have a wedding in 45 minutes. I'm standing in my driveway, coffee mug in one hand, city-approved demolition permit in the other. Behind me, a massive yellow excavator eases into position in my backyard, right next to the pristine white wedding tent that appeared there without my permission. Wedding guests are already showing up. Designer dresses, expensive suits. A limo has just pulled up with what I'm guessing is the bride and groom, and every single one of them is staring at the bulldozer. Just doing some home improvement, Jennifer, I say, and take a slow sip of coffee. It's my property. I'm allowed. Her face goes from white to red to a kind of blotchy purple in about 2 seconds. You can't do this. There are contracts. There are people. You'll ruin everything. The excavator operator, bless that man, swings the bucket around and lines it up with the old, rotting shed at the edge of my yard. The shed that's been an eyesore since the day I moved in. The one my inspection report literally called a tear-down structure. The one that just happens to be about 15 feet from the catering tent. A woman in a white dress steps out of the limo. She takes one look at the heavy machinery, the spinning treads, the bucket hanging in the air, and she bursts into tears. Jennifer is still screaming something about contracts and vendors and how I can't do this. But at this point, the engine is louder than she is. The operator looks over at me. I give him a thumbs up. He nods once, and with one smooth motion, he drives the bucket straight into the side of the shed. The whole thing shudders. Wood snaps. Dust explodes into the air. The ground actually shakes. Wedding guests start backing away, hands over their ears, stumbling in their nice shoes on my very real, very private property. And I just stand there in my driveway, sipping my coffee, watching my property finally start to become mine again. But let me back up, because this didn't start with a bulldozer. It started with wedding invitations in my mailbox. I bought my first house 4 months ago. It was perfect. 2 stories, big backyard, quiet street, the kind of place you see in movies where families have barbecues and kids play in the yard. I spent every penny I had saved for 10 years to buy it. The HOA seemed normal at first. Annoying, sure, but normal. Rules about lawn height, when you could put your trash cans out, the usual suburban control freak stuff. Kept my grass trimmed. Stayed off their radar. Then the emails started. At first, I thought it was a mistake. They were addressed to event coordinator and talked about booking dates, vendor payments, catering menus for something called Sunset Ridge Estate. I had no idea what Sunset Ridge Estate was. I replied, wrong email address. Got back. Please adhere to approved vendor list. Direct further questions to the HOA board. Okay, weird, but whatever. Then wedding invitations started showing up in my mailbox. Fancy ones. Embossed lettering. The kind that cost money. And every single one listed my address as the venue. You are cordially invited to the wedding of. Reception to follow at Sunset Ridge Estate 1247. Maple Grove Lane, that's my house. My address. I stared at one of those invitations for a solid 5 minutes, thinking I was losing my mind. Then I called the HOA president. Her name's Jennifer. She answered on the second ring, sounding cheerful. Hi, this is Jennifer with the Homeowners Association. How can I help you? Yeah, I said. You're sending out wedding invitations with my address on them. She laughed. Not a polite laugh. A condescending one. Oh, sweetie, she said. You must be the new owner. And that's when I knew this was going to be bad. The previous owner rented the property out for events, Jennifer said, like she was explaining something to a child. Your home's community designation is Sunset Ridge Estate. It's been that way for years. I sat down. Actually had to sit down. My house is not for rent, I said slowly. It's my private home. Well, it's also a significant source of community funding, she replied. Her voice had gone cold. The HOA bylaws allow us to utilize designated community assets for fundraising purposes. Your property is one of them. That's not legal. You can't just. It's in the bylaws. I suggest you read them. She hung up. I pulled out every piece of paperwork from the sale. The deed, the disclosures, the inspection reports, every single document I'd signed. Nothing, not one word about my house being a community event venue. They'd made it up. I called a lawyer the next day. Cost me $300 for a consultation, but he confirmed what I already knew. They have no legal right to your property, he said. None. This is completely fabricated. So I sent a cease and desist letter. Certified mail. Legal letterhead. The whole thing. My property is private. You have no authority to schedule events here. Cancel all bookings immediately or face legal action. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. 1 week later, I came home from work to find a massive white tent in my backyard. Not a small tent. A wedding tent. With tables, chairs, string lights, a wooden dance floor, and 2 guys in catering uniforms unloading equipment from a van. I stood in my driveway, groceries in hand, staring. Then I called the police. And that's when things got worse. The officer who showed up was young. Looked tired. He listened to my story, nodded a lot, and then went to talk to Jennifer. She was already there. Of course she was. Schmoozing with the wedding planner like they were old friends. I watched from my porch as she pulled out a folder, showed the officer some papers. He read them, looked at me, looked back at her. Then he walked over. Sir, she's showing me a signed agreement from the previous owner allowing the property to be used for events. That agreement doesn't transfer to me, I said. I'm the new owner. I didn't sign anything. I understand, but this is a civil matter. There's a wedding scheduled for tomorrow. I can't just kick everyone out. You'll need to take this to court. My hands were shaking, so they can just trespass. Use my property against my will. He looked genuinely sorry. I'm sorry, but yeah, civil matter. He left. Jennifer smiled at me from across the lawn. Actually smiled. The wedding was happening tomorrow, Saturday, 3 p.m., and there was nothing I could do. That night I didn't sleep. I paced my living room, looking out at the tent in my backyard, glowing with string lights they'd left on. They were using my home, my sanctuary, the place I'd saved a decade to buy. And the law was shrugging. I was standing at the window at 2 a.m. when I saw it. The old shed at the back corner of my yard. Rusted. Falling apart. An eyesore I'd been meaning to deal with since I moved in. My home inspection report had listed it as a structure recommended for immediate removal. And just like that, I had an idea. A terrible, beautiful, perfect idea. I waited until 8 a.m. to make the call. Found a demolition company that advertised same-day emergency service. The guy who answered sounded half asleep. Yeah, what do you need? I have a structure on my property that needs to come down. Today. As soon as possible. What kind of structure? Old shed. Maybe 10 by 12. Falling apart. It's a safety hazard. I could hear him typing. We can get someone out there by early afternoon. It's going to cost extra for the rush. I don't care what it costs. All right. We'll have a crew there around 2. I hung up and checked the wedding timeline I'd found in my mailbox. Ceremony at 3 p.m. Guests arriving at 2:30. Perfect. I spent the morning getting the demolition permit approved online. Took about an hour. The shed was already listed as a tier down on my inspection report, so the city didn't even blink. By noon, I had everything I needed. Legal permit, scheduled crew, property rights, all completely above board. At 1 p.m., the caterers showed up, started setting up tables under the tent. I watched from my kitchen window, coffee in hand. At 1:45, I heard the rumble of a diesel engine. The flatbed truck, carrying the excavator, turned onto my street. Huge. Yellow. Impossible to miss. I walked outside. The caterers froze. One of them pointed. The truck backed into my driveway, beeping. The operator started unloading the excavator. That's when Jennifer came running out of her house. She was in a dress. Hair done. Makeup perfect. Ready for the wedding. Her face went white when she saw the machine. What is that? I took a sip of coffee. Home improvement, I said. And that's when she started screaming. The excavator rolled into position, right next to the wedding tent. Jennifer was screaming. The caterers had stopped working. Wedding guests were starting to arrive, stepping out of cars in formal wear, staring at the machine like it had fallen from the sky. You can't do this. Jennifer shrieked. There are contracts. There's a bride. I held up my phone. Showed her the demolition permit. City approved. It's my property. That shed's a safety hazard. Her mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. The limo pulled up. The bride stepped out. Took one look at the excavator. Started crying. The operator looked at me through the cab window. Raised his eyebrows. I nodded. The engine roared. The bucket swung toward the shed and slammed into it. The whole structure shuddered. Wood cracked. Dust exploded into the air like a bomb went off. The ground shook. Wedding guests screamed. Started backing away, covering their ears. The bride was sobbing. The groom was yelling at Jennifer. The caterers were packing up. And Jennifer just stood there, frozen, watching her perfect event disintegrate. The crew took their time. Every piece of that shed came down slowly, methodically, loud. By 3 p.m., the wedding was over before it started. The tent came down. The guests left. The bride and groom drove away, still arguing. Jennifer stood in the wreckage, covered in dust, staring at me. You just ruined everything, she whispered. No, I said. You did. The second you decided my home wasn't mine. 2 weeks later, the HOA got sued by the wedding family. Paid out a massive settlement. Nearly bankrupted them. Jennifer was voted out at the next meeting. And my backyard, finally quiet, finally mine.